have some special guests with us this morning. Clayton and Thelma, if you could come join me at the table at this moment. I'd like to introduce you, and if we could have the first slide of a certain place in the world, and this place is Ecuador, because Clayton and Thelma, come on up, make yourselves at home. They moved to Ecuador way back in 1990. And so I thought I'd put a little slide presentation together for you all so you can look at your own country. They don't know I was going to, what this is about, but that is a place in Ecuador. Do you have any idea where it is?
Galapagos Islands.
Yes, could you say it again?
It's in the Galapagos Islands.
Yeah, so are you inspired by the Galapagos Islands?
Yes, but we've never been there. But we
I was
are
going to ask you if you've been there. You're
there.
still inspired. Yeah, it's only 600 miles offshore, as I looked it
A
up.
little far to swim.
So, nonetheless, if you were inspired by the Galapagos Islands, you have something in common with a man by the name of Darwin, who was there. And it says that he was inspired to and informed his theory of natural selection and the origin of species when Charles Darwin was there. So he was inspired, you were inspired, but inspired in maybe opposite directions. He did leave open the possibility that God exists. He just said you can't really know. So he was agnostic. And, you know, you just can't know. Maybe he did exist, maybe he didn't exist. And so, next slide, I have a question for the children here. Would any of the children like to answer this question? Why is Ecuador called Ecuador? Any idea? Yes. It's in the middle. It has something to do with the middle. Yes. The equator runs through Ecuador. So the equator is that imaginary line, equidistance from the North Pole to the South Pole, dividing the planet into the northern and southern hemispheres. And so if we can look at the next slide here, somebody is laying on the equator. Have you been to the equator? Probably.
Yes.
Numerous times. Did you ever lay on the equator? You didn't.
Posed there, but
You
not
posed
laid
it.
down.
All right. Yeah. So the Galapagos Islands, that's pretty famous. Wilmore is not so famous as the Galapagos Islands, but you may not realize this, but you're looking at some of your own history here, because Clayton and Thelma lived in this area before we moved here way back in 1985, and they were actually a part of this church. And Clayton, I remember one time I asked you to do some teaching or preaching for me because I was going to be out of town. And Thelma, I'll never forget, when we first moved here, we rented this 2-bedroom apartment, and that's where we had a time of fellowship and worship and studying the Bible, and that's where this church started. So Thelma, you were our very first worship leader.
Yes, I guess I was.
Because I can still remember you kind of stuffed back into that corner and behind a keyboard, and you were leading in worship. Thank you.
Thank you for giving me that opportunity.
Yes. Yeah. And so what brought you here to this area?
We had lived in Nicaragua and Costa Rica, and we needed to make a decision where we're going to do missions long term, or am I going to go back to carpenter work or farming or something? And we decided to come to Asbury and get prepared to do missions.
Okay. And then you, in fact, did that. You've been many years on the mission field. And let's show the next slide here. Just wanted you to see the big picture of South America, and Ecuador will be on the west coast of South America. And now if we can go to the next slide. I don't know how well you can see that, but those are some of the main areas that you live. Thelma, can you tell us what those places are, where you were first? Just give a real quick overview.
The name at the top, Puerto Viejo, is out near the Pacific Ocean. That's where our family lived for 8.5, 9 years. We raised our kids there, and they thought it was pretty great. It was a great place to live. And then we moved to Cuenca, which is, well, you guys can see it. Cuenca was our next location where we worked with some young adult missionary interns, but that took us out to a town called Gualaceo, which is the next name, where a young man wanted us to meet his family, and that became, you'll see a picture later, a house church movement that is still thriving today and growing.
Yeah.
And then the name below that is Arenillas, which was another contact at the university where a church is also thriving today.
Yeah.
Down almost close to the Peruvian border.
Okay.
Well, good morning again, and I bring a paper because sometimes I think, why did I pick that picture? What was the purpose? So this is our family in 1990. The souvenir we took from Kentucky along with us to Ecuador was our youngest daughter. She was born in Central Baptist Hospital of Lexington, Kentucky, but this was our family ready to go with a lot of ideas and a lot of hope for the future and a little bit, or quite a bit, naive. Go ahead. And there we are in front of the small church in the Puerto Viejo city, which is on the coastal plain next to the Pacific. A little bit bigger, a little bit wiser, I think, but we spent, like I said, approximately 8.5 or 9 years there total. Go ahead, the next picture. This couple in the center, Juan and Gloria Altamirano, are the couple that were left in charge of the church when we left, and they are still there today. They're a strong family. All of their children are married, and their spouses and their children help lead the church. Juan and Gloria Altamirano, and then our last Sunday in Puerto Viejo, this was the group that had gathered to bid us farewell. It is a thriving church. It is a permanent structure now. That was a temporary, more of a pavilion-type structure on the land they had purchased, but it is now an established and thriving church. God bless them. They are on their way. They are totally independent of missionary help. After a year of a sabbatical in the States, our family was ready again to head out of the country. On the left, our two oldest children went to Mexico for 2 years for music training at a Christian conservatory, and Bethany, our youngest, went with us to Ecuador, to the city of Cuenca. Go ahead. Our work in Cuenca was mainly at the beginning to reach out at the State University, and the man on beside Clayton was a young student who was not married. He was studying to be an English professor at a high school level. Today he is the father of 5 children and continues to be the top of his school. He's the top English professor, and he's the leader of the church in Gualaceo. Go ahead and change. That church has become a full-blown family movement. Christians, 9 siblings, along with Sixto, their children, their grandchildren, and an outreach beyond that. It is also a thriving church completely under the leadership of local leadership. We are spiritual parents, but we do not attend there regularly. We go when we're invited. Next picture, please. Our most recent visit there was in March when Clayton was asked to preach a sermon for another baptism. Over Clayton's shoulder again is Sixto, the young man who came to Christ, is now a father and the leader of this church. This older couple had come to Christ, and it was just a precious time to see them want to be baptized. Both of them have health issues. They said, is there any way we can be baptized with having to get into the cold water of the river? We live up in the mountains now. And they said, sure, we can pour water over you. And they had a special time. We watched them pour a little bucket of water over both of their heads. The water just ran, but they knew they were baptized. And you can see them there. And Clayton here teaching that day, again, a gathered group, large. I would say there were probably 150 there, counting kids, young people, adults, and up to older people who are now part of that church. Go ahead. And again, Clayton with his arms around this couple. I love that they had their hands clasped behind him. To me, it's the symbol of the new, deeper relationship that had formed between the two of them. But Clayton, for me, is standing there watching his former disciples, men that he had baptized, now baptizing, now bringing in people into the kingdom. Next. This is from the town of Arenillas, which is close to the Peru border. It is also a family movement. And this was their an anniversary celebration a few years ago. Go ahead, the next one. This was the first baptism at that church in 2007. 4 people baptized, but out of that now is this church thriving. Again, this is led by local leaders. We don't live there. We are very frequent visitors at this point yet, but it is led by the local people, the local leaders. And this was a special, special day after 2 years of a Bible study course called The Life of Christ, which is based on the book of Matthew. But every time Matthew references something in the Old Testament, we go back and learn about what's this about. And that group had graduated from this 2-year course. Go ahead, the next picture. This picture was taken during COVID. You can see everybody has a mask on. We had to delay graduations because of restrictions, but finally we were able to be together, and the man on the right was the head of this program out of Quito, and he came, brave man, into the lion's den of, COVID was passing, but we were still all being very cautious. But again, we had a rich privilege online to share, to continue these classes. Originally we met in person, but for a good 6 to 8 months, we were doing it online in order for them to be able to finish. Go ahead. This is our family, and we are scattered. On the far left is our son Dwayne and his family. They live in Atlanta, Georgia. On the far right is Marcia, our daughter. They live in Nashville, Tennessee. And our daughter, the one that was born in Kentucky, is married to an Ecuadorian, and he's a co-pastor with his father and a brother of a church, and they help with the leadership there, and they live not far from us, and we love having them close. Go ahead, you can show the next picture. Or maybe there isn't another one, that's fine. Okay, I wasn't sure where I ended this. But God is good, and I just want to say, all of this happens when we take one step at a time. We had no idea where it would end when we began. We didn't know how far we would go when we left Wilmore, Lexington in 1990. But God is faithful, and it's one step at a time, whether you live here or whether you live there. So start walking.